Hey, welcome back everyone to another episode of the Brothers of Metal. I'm John.
I'm Michael.
All right, so I want to do kind of a shorter video here just to introduce a new segment, and this is a segment that we've decided to call "Out of the Ashes:
Yep.
Forgotten Favorites." And so this is going to be dedicated to some records that are older, that just aren't going to get the same kind of attention that, say, something that's just come out.
Yeah.
And something that I've noticed, as I've kind of assembled a list here, records that I haven't seen a lot of reviews about. Certainly nobody's taken the time to discuss it, in 2022, 2023.
Yeah.
So
Or it could be a record that we just feel it was just underrated. That kind
yeah,
of flew
underappreciated at the
under
time.
the radar. Yeah.
Right. So to kick things off, and I was telling Michael that what I want to do with this is maybe pique his interest a little bit with kind of the concept here, and see if it's something you might be interested in checking out, but also anybody watching this. So kick things off. It's actually going to be two records, and I'll explain. So everybody who's familiar with Savatage would probably know that the last studio record, Poets and Madmen, was quite some time ago, over 20 years ago.
Wow.
And before that record was released, there were some lineup changes, pretty significant lineup changes. So Al Pitrelli got the opportunity to go work with Megadeth, and then Zach Stevens decided to leave the band as well for some personal reasons, and Savatage did one more record. John Oliva came back on the mic, and he was always there writing the songs with Paul. That never changed, but then he got back on the mic, and they sort of fizzled out after that. I mean, they did it. They toured. They brought on Jack Frost and to play alongside Chris Caffrey and kind of fill out the lineup, but that was going to be kind of it as they diverted their attention to Trans-Siberian Orchestra pretty much full time.
What year did Trans-Siberian Orchestra kind of kick off? Was it?
Well, I mean, the first record came out in '96.
Oh, okay.
And I believe it was.
So they were already in the midst of.
Yeah, before. Yeah, so TSO put out Christmas Eve and Other Stories, Christmas Attic, and Beethoven's Last Night. All three albums before Savatage.
Oh, okay.
Was kind of done. And I think they waited, I want to say, I read it was like 3 years into the TSO, story before they started kind of touring more extensively. But it took a little bit before they were this, holiday staple that they are now, where it's like every December or November, December, you expect it. But yeah, after Poets and Madmen by Savatage, then, the rest of it came out. So The Lost Christmas Eve, Night Castle, Letters from the Labyrinth, which was their latest. So, and maybe this year or 2023 there'll be a new one that comes out. Who knows?
Oh, really?
For those guys, yeah. Who knows? But
I wasn't a huge fan of their latest one, but
I wasn't either. Yeah. But I hope. There was a lot of ideas that Paul worked on before he passed. So one of the interesting things about Savatage, especially since Hall of the Mountain King, was that Paul was really a huge creative and driving force of the band.
Yep.
So what would it sound like if those guys went off and worked without him? What would that sound like? What if it was just John, doing what John does, and see what happens? So the two records I wanted to just touch on are going to be the first Circle to Circle album.
Okay.
And that is Watching in Silence. Watching in Silence from the year 2003.
Okay. So what's that lineup?
Oh, I'll get to that. That's the cool part. Okay. And then the first John Oliva's Pain.
Okay.
Record.
And what year was that one?
And this would have been 2004. So here's the cool connection. Okay. So Zach, finally gets back into, the creative space, and he puts out his first, ostensibly his first solo record, but he has a band assembled.
Okay.
For this project, and the lineup for the band is as follows. So we had, of course, himself on vocals, Matt Laporte on guitars, John Zahner on keyboards, Kevin Rothney on bass, and Christopher Kinder on drums.
Okay.
So that was 2003.
Okay.
And then John Oliva puts out his first solo record. And his band features Matt Laporte on guitars, John Zahner on keys, Kevin Rothney on bass, and Christopher Kinder on drums. So what happened was, after the first Circle to Circle record, things just didn't work out. And John talks about it in the liner notes here for a hot second. Just things didn't work out for whatever reason. Circle to Circle would go on with a new lineup from then on out, and I think they put out an additional 4 or 5 studio releases. They're not really active now, as far as I know, but that's what happened. But what's even more interesting about this record here.
So sorry to interrupt you, but the John Oliva album came out first, and then those
second. So the Circle to Circle came out. The band working with Zach Stevens.
Yeah.
Things didn't work out, so Zach ended up assembling a new band.
Oh,
John kind of swept in, and now the thing about this record is that if you look at the writing credits, it's written by John Oliva and Chris Caffrey of Savatage.
Oh, the Circle to Circle album?
Yeah.
Okay, so it has maybe a Savatage feel.
So yeah, and the thing I wanted to really, point out here is like this is, we had Poets and Madmen, but this is the lost Savatage album.
Okay.
Because you have Zach on vocals, and yes, you don't have any of the other Savatage guys performing here, although I'm sure they lend some tracks here and there.
Yeah.
As far as songwriting, guitarist Matt Laporte does contribute a few ideas here and there, but it's predominantly written by John Oliva.
Okay, cool.
And there's a few tracks with Chris Caffrey also on writing. So this is
so there were no hard feelings when Zach left. When he left Savatage. Okay.
No, just wanted to do something else creatively, and he did that. And then like we have this, which is like I was saying, this is the lost Savatage album.
Cool.
Things kind of didn't work out with that lineup, like I was saying. Zach, goes on with a new lineup. But because John was so closely affiliated with that Watching in Silence record, he saw those guys, recording and and this is also co-produced by John Oliva and Chris Caffrey.
Okay.
So he's like, hey, he had already recorded this record by himself and just kind of saw the magic in the studio of these other guys and thought, this album deserves a live band feel.
Okay.
So he had those guys re-record this record, and that's what we have here, Taj Mahal.
Okay, cool.
Which is the first John Oliva's Pain record, and these are sort of ideas that he had kind of set aside from all his years of songwriting. I mean, he started in like 78, 79. I mean, there's a lot of material on here, but I mean, this you could almost consider the other Lost Savatage album.
Okay, that's cool.
Separate from the other John Oliva's Pain records that would come after it. I mean, this is when you listen to it, probably the closest thing to what they were doing, like in that gutter ballet kind of period, late 80s.
Okay.
And I mean, together, it's just like if you're a fan of Savatage, and there's a vast catalog of offshoots. There's Chris Caffrey has 6 or 7 solo records at this point. You got at least 5 or 6 from these guys, and 5 total from John Oliva. It's like, what should I check out? Well, you got to start with these two. These are foundational to, the band as a whole, and I think really do the best job at capturing that kind of classic and signature sound of Savatage. They're amazing albums. There is, and what's really cool is like this is sort of the Lost Savatage record of the post Chris Oliva era.
Okay.
And then this is sort of like the Lost Savatage record of the the Chris Oliva era in a sense, before Zach took over on vocals. So you kind of get the best of both worlds, and I would say absolute forgotten classics, and a must-have for any Savatage fan. If you don't have those,
Sweet.
Pick them up.
Yeah, because I mean, we're eventually going to do our next Make a Fan Out of You video is going to revolve around Savatage, and we're not going to talk about the record that we're covering yet, but as I was kind of diving into that, I really started to appreciate John Olivo's voice a lot more, and I was like, does he have anything newer? With the newer, production value. So that I would assume those records sound a little more modern. So those are two I would definitely want to dive into.
Yeah, they definitely do, and I mean he would definitely disagree, but to me this one sounds the best.
Okay.
Because there's just the way that everything's recorded. This is all Morris Sound Studios, by the way, and same thing with this one.
Sweet.
Our little Iced Earth connection. But
yeah, awesome.
But yeah, Jim and Tom. Is that right? Anyway, the Morris brothers.
Yep.
I mean, if you were to discover more of what they were a part of or where their studio was utilized or when their studio was utilized, you'd be like, oh man, there's a lot of stuff from Morris Sound. And like,
yeah,
there sure is. But that's the other cool connection to the, other stuff we're into. But
awesome.
Yeah, so that's that. I just wanted to kind of bring those to light, out of the ashes, so to speak. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's it for that one. Really, have anything to add before we close?
No, I'm just I'm glad you brought those up. I wasn't expecting those two records, and I didn't know much about them, so now I'm kind of excited to dive into them.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for us today on the Brothers of Metal. Thanks everyone for stopping by. Take care.
Take care.